right, so thank you so much for having us. We are the Miracle Middle School team. As you can see here, I am Michelle Dillard, the Assistant Superintendent for Middle Schools, and so excited to be here to talk to you about the PLC process, the framework, and share some updates. And you can never get too tired of this, because this PLC framework is like the guide to all of that work that you just previously heard Susan and Suzanne speak about, that will help you get student achievement up.
And I'm Jessica Rosenthal. I'm the Executive Administrator for Middle Schools. You see on here that one of our big sayings is expect miracles. We believe so much in all of our schools in JCPS, and it's such an honor to get to work with so many of our middle schools, and glad that others are able to join us today too, and just spend a little bit of time in our day talking about the PLC framework. I just want to give a shout out to Ms. Dillard too. She is a solution tree consultant. So she is a resident PLC expert, and we're very lucky to have her as a resource. So we're going to jump right in and spend a few minutes with the PLC framework. So how do you find it? This is a perfect lead in from what we just heard Dr. Coleman saying there at the end. You can find it with the teacher backpack. That's the most important thing to remember, that if we're using the teacher backpack, which we should be all the time, this should be the landing page for our teachers and the work that they are doing. The PLC framework is in there. So here are just some specific steps to get to the teacher backpack. If you're getting there for the very first time, if you go to the JCPS website and then go to employees, click on teacher backpack. It's one of those nice big rectangles right there. And then you can click on any grade. It's in the guiding resources across categories section, which is in the bottom right. And then once you're there, save the link, save that link to the PLC framework digital version. However, we will make sure that you know that there are going to be some updates. And so when those updates come out, you want to be sure to save the updated link. And we'll make sure that all principals, administrators, teachers, and instructional support staff know about that link and know how to access the updated PLC framework. Not huge updates, but you'll hear about that here in just a few minutes.
So now how to use the PLC framework, like how is it used and how should you use it? And I want to thank you, Champion Rosenthal, for that shout out with my work with Solution Tree, but it all started with collaborative teams. And so they're the core PLC resource. So if you're looking at this actually should be the starting and ending point of each collaborative team meeting. So as an administrators that are going into those collaborative team meetings, you should make sure that they are using this. This is a map, like a roadmap for the PLC process and the success of them. And if you want to have high performing PLCs, then you will follow this roadmap. And again, as I said, it is also proven to improve increase in student achievement and school improvement. As the previous principal of Seneca, when we implemented collaborative teams there, that is when we went from the 5th to the 9th to the 12th to the 42nd percentile, because we embraced PLCs and we saw student achievement improve. So if you are looking with your team for the PLC process, I'm not sure what, oh, okay. And these things should guide the work of the collaborative teams. Each time that they're meeting, the 4 critical PLC questions: what is it that we want our students to know and be able to do? How do we know if students learned it? How do we respond when students don't learn? How do we respond when students do learn? These critical questions are very important. And so as building leaders, when you are looking and I know that every school has already created some type of form for your collaborative team to use, but if these 4 questions are not a part of that, I would highly encourage you to go back and make adjustments to that so that you can see that you are working toward this. These 4 critical questions have been outlined in the PLC process to align with our 6 systems and pillars, our racial equity, the MTSS, deeper learning, So you can show your team, and that is inside the PLC framework, that matrix that shows the alignment to these 4 questions. And now Champion Rosenthal will talk about the systematic process.
So here we have listed the first 5 steps, and we're going to go through each of them briefly, just so you see how they are chunked. But I'll just reiterate what Ms. Dillard just said about these 4 critical PLC questions. That if the work that's happening in a collaborative team is not answering one of these questions, then it's time to take a step back, revisit the PLC framework, and recalibrate on what the work is. We should always be answering these 4 questions during our collaborative team time. And these steps align so well with the PLC questions, and hopefully you'll see that overlap as we go through. The first one, creating team norms, that's just what we need to do to get ourselves started at the beginning of the year. So we know you all are planning your re-entrance to the PLCs and collaborative teams, even in this virtual world. And this is still what the steps of the PLC process would be. As a former principal, as principal at Hawthorne Elementary, we followed these steps before we had them fully written out, but this is what we followed because this is the PLC model. So you create those team norms. There's resources right there in the PLC framework on how to do that. Step 2 is assess the current reality. And that's something that all of us as professionals should be doing. Where are we currently? Because how can we know what we need to do next if we don't know where we are right now? We use that key data to do number 3, which is to set long-term SMART goals. There's lots of great resources out there on how to write an appropriate SMART goal that's both measurable and attainable, realistic, timely, and specific. So we want to make sure that we are modeling that as administrators for our staff so that they are able to write really effective SMART goals that we can revisit all year long so we can see our progress being made. Step 4 is to identify and deconstruct essential standards. We have a new resource that Ms. Dillard will be sharing with you here in just a little bit around that step 4. And then step 5 is commit to a guaranteed and viable curriculum. This is a really important step just for the culture of your school and for the culture of your building for students and for families as well. That guaranteed and viable curriculum is what you're promising to give students by the end of a grade. And that should be so much a part of your school that you're sharing that with students and you're sharing that with families as well. And it just helps everybody be accountable and excited about the work that you're doing. And it also reminds everyone what the focus is all throughout the year, that we know what we've guaranteed, what we've committed to do in all of our classes for our students. And there can be constant check-ins to just make sure we're all on the same page with that.
And Champion Rosenthal, I just want to add one thing to that. And you mentioned that about the virtual environment. And this is really a great time for our schools to make sure that our families, that the parents know that we are guaranteeing a viable curriculum for them. So I just wanted to reiterate that. And thank you so much for mentioning that.
Great point. So then we get into steps 6 through 10. And this is the cycle that our collaborative teams will be following all year long. So those first steps, those steps 1 through 5, are really just to get things in the right place so that we have all that background work done so that we can do this meaningful work of this cycle. So step 6 is to set a short-term SMART goal. So that's based on that long-term SMART goal. And we've talked about this with our principal champions quite a bit, that there's such value in having these goals, because if you don't have a goal, you don't have something to look back on and then celebrate success. And, we work so hard as educators. We have the most amazing instructional staff in this district, and they are giving their all the time, day in and day out. It's so important to do this step 6, because if you don't do step 6, you can't do step 10, which is to reflect on the SMART goal and celebrate the amazing progress that's been made because of your hard work. So make sure that your teams don't skip this step 6 and have a system in place to collect their short-term SMART goals and a system in place to revisit them in step 10. So after you have that short-term SMART goal, it's step 7, collaboratively plan for teaching. And that's getting into the meat of the work. We've got our curriculum frameworks and our instructional frameworks. And step 8 is create the common formative assessment. So you know what you want students to learn, you know what your goal is, you've planned, and then you have that common formative assessment so that you then give the common formative assessment, you get back that student data, and then now we're at step 9 where you plan for intervention and enrichment. So those answer those questions that we saw early on. What do we do when students learn? What do we do when students don't learn? And then finally, there's step 10 where you reflect on that SMART goal. How do we do getting towards that SMART goal? That's that professional learning, and that's where we grow as educators to figure out what the next things are so that we can get closer to meeting our SMART goal, or we recognize what we did well, we document that so that we make sure we keep doing that important work. And then finally, there's strengthening the cycle, and that's step 11 with self-assessment and step 12 with meeting with an administrator. And so that's a key part of your work too. Of course, we know that our administrators are spending lots of times in PLC monitoring for those 4 questions and progress through those different steps, but having an intentional check-in to really talk about the progress, how the collaborative teams are going, what additional supports are needed. And that's also what step 11 is too. And there's some great resources in the PLC framework to help you self-assess and to have really effective meetings with administrators to keep the great work going.
So with the PLC framework, what's new? You heard Champion Rosenthal speak about this earlier. There are going to be some updates. And so several of these updates you heard about in the previous session. And I just want you all to know we didn't plan this, but how wonderful to see that we're all on the same page and to show how all of these things are connected. So we do have the standards deconstruction and unit planning. And so that is something. So if you weren't on the last one, you can see here that this here helps you to be able to take a bundle of standards and to be able to plan those all at once. And it goes through this, where the previous one was kind of where teachers may have thought that standards should be taught in isolation, and that's not what we wanted. So very thankful for Suzanne and her team for creating this. So assessing the student learning, it talks about the standards. You can align all of your standards there. Success criteria for mastery of the standard, and then there are some questions that you should be asking, and then breaking down a standard. So this is just another little preview if you missed the previous session with Susan and Suzanne. The assessment landscape page, so we have updated that, and if you'll click on that formative assessment one, so it is important for you to see how all of the work is connected. And when I was looking at these updates on this formative assessment, I'm not seeing.
Does it still just show this?
Okay, now I can see it now. So I wanted you to see how that even with the assessment landscape right here, what is its purpose? It is connected to PLC framework step number 8. So this here will show you the purpose of the common formative assessment, and it goes along with step 8. So it's not something separate. It's something that works tangent together. How should a teacher use it? Well, it talks about within or between an instructional unit, teachers administer common and formative assessments. You just heard us talk about that. That is actually step number 9 in the PLC framework. And so I wanted to just show you, so teachers, counselors, administrators, just whoever is on here, that you could see the connection of these items that we are having for you to show all these resources, that they are connected, they're not separate. You heard them talk about the quality work protocol. That's going to be put in there as well. The TNTP assignment review protocols. And then within the TNTP assignment review protocol, then you have like ELA, you see that there's math, science, and social studies. So it is very, very important that you get your training on this and that you begin to look at these protocols to see about the assignments that your teachers are creating for our students. again, we want to make sure that we are improving academics. Even though we don't have a state test, we still have an obligation to our students and our families to make sure that our kids are getting the most rigorous curriculum and assessments, assignments that they can get. And these tools here are those tools that are going to help you do that. So we are working to link these tools into the PLC framework and update it. We've got to change some of the language in there. I thought that would be pretty simple and easy to do, but it's not. But anyway, it is what it is. We're going to get it done. And then we will send that out to everyone. And you'll have to go to the teacher backpack because that's where you'll be able to find it. So I just wanted you to know that these things are going to be coming up soon to be in the PLC framework. We want to put that in there so that everything that you need, all the resources, that you can go to one spot and to be able to find them. And truly, I will say again, in closing this, it is so important for you to go back to revisit your PLCs, look at your documents that you have, and make sure that they are aligned with the PLC framework. That was Dr. Polio's vision, was to have something to help the entire district, because we knew that our collaborative teams were all over the place. And we have some excellent collaborative teams at all levels, elementary, middle, high, even in our special schools. We have some great teams, but we want an entire district to have great teams in every single building, ensuring that we are, number one, going through the teacher backpack, using all of those resources, and then using this PLC framework that encompasses the instructional frameworks and the curriculum framework as well. So we thank you for joining us today. We do have some additional tools for the administrators or AICs if you would like when you're going in and you're monitoring these collaborative teams. So if you're interested in those, just reach out to us. We are always here to help, and we love sharing because we know that we believe in continuous improvement and learning by doing, and together we can do all things in JCPS. We just thank each and every one of you for joining us today. And again, you can't hear enough about PLCs, the collaborative teams, the teacher backpack, because that is what is going to move the needle for our district. So thank you all so much.
From Nicole Peters, asking about the best way to monitor data or protocol for PLC during NTI, especially during maybe a virtual PLC protocol. So to answer that, I'll answer the second question, and maybe Ms. Dillard, you can jump in with ways to monitor data. The protocol during NTI is the same as it is in person in terms of those steps. And we are very lucky to be bringing in Mastery Connect, which is a great resource for assessment, because if you don't have assessments, you can't get data. So there has to be an assessment system to start with in order to have the data. And then Ms. Dillard, what other suggestions do you have around data protocols during NTI, or even data collection during NTI?
So I would say, and we have some schools, so if I'm not sure who that person was, but if she will email me, I will send her a data protocol that some of our amazing champions have created to be able to use during the virtual setting. And so one of the things is that doing your Google Meet, so it's the same process that you would use as you had mentioned previously, but I do have a protocol to be able to help use, and it's going to be very important that when you are in your collaborative teams that you're able to pull up that protocol to be able to go by that protocol and to be able to look to see that you are getting the results that you wanted or you didn't want. And that's a good time for you then too to check in on that short-term SMART goal to see like where you are and how close you are to getting to your long-term goal. So I will send a document to the person. So if you email me and ask me for the data protocol, I'll share that with her.
It's a great question though. I know we're all thinking about what needs to be modified and what needs to stay the same for NTI. So thanks for asking that question, because we do want to keep the integrity of the PLC process happening even during NTI. In fact, maybe even, I don't know if I'd say more so, but just as important, because we have a lot of work to do to make sure our kids are where they need to be academically, especially after a delay and some changes starting in March. So we got a lot of work to do. We need that PLC process and those great collaborative teams.